The beginning of the 20th century heralded an era of feverish electric railway construction in the United States. Among the more notable developments in the West were the Northern Electric Railway, which joined Sacramento to Chico in 1907, and the Oakland, Antioch, and Eastern, completed from Oakland to Sacramento in 1913. Amalgamation of these two lines in 1929 under ownership of the Western Pacific formed a unified system of 182 miles, stretching from San Francisco Bay to the upper Sacramento Valley. This was the railroad which we know as the Sacramento Northern. The scenes which follow provide a fascinating picture of the Sacramento Northern as it existed in 1940, just a year before abandonment of passenger service. They provide eloquent evidence of why this interurban system achieved such nationwide renown among electric railway fans. In truth, the SN was loaded with superlatives and unique attributes. As the longest and undoubtedly most scenic interurban in the United States, it included an electrified car ferry, a tunnel 2/3 of a mile long, many bridges and trestles, local streetcar systems, and both interurban freight and passenger operations using a great variety of wood and steel passenger equipment, including open-end parlor buffet observation cars. The last vestige of this long-lived electrically powered system survived until April 10th of 1965, when a 650 class electric locomotive lowered its pantograph for the last time in the Yuba City Yard and closed the final chapter in the history of one of America's most interesting interurbans. Americans in the 1930s were recovering from the economic depression. Times were hard. For persons of ordinary means, the decision to pursue a hobby of movie making in 16mm involved serious economic considerations. Thus we are truly indebted to two men who had the foresight to choose the quality of 16mm film, even though the cost restricted the quantity of their work. They are Art Alter and Chuck Savage, cinematographers extraordinaire, whose cameras recorded most of the footage you're about to see. So come along on a trip on the Sacramento Northern from San Francisco to Chico, including the Woodland and Colusa branches, and experience the essence of the interurban. For the last year and a half of operation, Sacramento Northern trains operated into the Trans-Bay Terminal in downtown San Francisco over the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge. For 27 years earlier, trains terminated on the Key System Pier, which extended into the bay from the Oakland shore. At both locations, lack of storage space often required deadhead movements to the terminal. Normal weekday schedules saw 11 daily movements through the San Francisco terminal, including trains to and from the north, Contra Costa locals, and deadhead movements. Power distribution on the Bridge Railway was by both third rail and overhead catenary. Key System trains used the 600-volt third rail, while Sacramento Northern and Southern Pacific trains shared the 1200-volt overhead. These sequences show typical SN operation over the Key System in the mid-30s. South End equipment was very adaptable and could run on either 600, 1200, or 1500 volts. In the beginning, Oakland, Antioch, and Eastern passenger cars used only trolley poles for current collection. Through service to the Key System Pier in 1912 required the addition of pantographs. And after the 1928 amalgamation of North and South End lines, third rail shoes were required to permit operation on the old Northern Electric line to Chico. The compact facilities at 40th and Shafter Street were the Oakland hub of the system. Eastbound trains lowered pantographs and raised trolley poles, and additional cars were added or deleted as traffic required. 1210 is one of 3 coaches acquired from the Ocean Shore Railroad, which was generally used for large groups such as excursions and school trains. The San Francisco Post Office Special was an annual excursion run to the State Fair in Sacramento in the fall. Rock Ridge, the Sacramento Northern left city streets for private right-of-way and climbed through the Oakland Hills on a steep grade which exceeded 4.5%. Just ahead of this ascending train is where the present Bay Area Rapid Transit Tunnel penetrates the hills. During the days of passenger service, freights were rarely seen except at night, when most were scheduled. Havens, at the West Tunnel Portal, was the location of a mandatory brake test for all trains descending into Oakland. Unstable soil conditions required special heavy bracing at the West Portal. Photogenic East Portal was a photographer's delight. Undoubtedly, one of the most scenic routes of any interurban in this country was SN's transit of Shepherd Canyon and Redwood Canyon, shown here east of the tunnel separating the two canyons. These scenes of trains in this sylvan setting recapture its beauty. Since these canyons are part of a municipal watershed, they are among the few areas served by the SN which have not been overrun by suburban sprawl. And they appear today much the same as they did when these films were taken in 1940. Pinehurst was the destination of many picnic specials and excursion extras. And when patronage was heavy, the SN was forced to rent key system trailers, which they pulled with locomotives or box motors. Valley Vista is the appropriate name of this photogenic spot, and the westbound school train, whose consist includes old steam coach trailers, rounds the curve. Passing through the town of Moraga from the deck of 653, heading an eastbound freight. Here, all evidence of the electric line's existence has been obliterated by a large shopping center. Flashing white lights indicated to the motorman that the Interurban's comic collection of wigwag crossing protectors were working properly. The Interurban provided St. Mary's College with reliable and convenient transportation for many years. The scenic route of the Sacramento Northern continued on towards the San Ramon Valley, threading through the lesser hills south of Lafayette. Sarah Knapp was named after Sarah Napthali, daughter of a company official, and it was the junction of the Danville branch, which ran south to that town and to a park near Mount Diablo for 10 years before being abandoned in 1924. The town of Walnut Creek was a considerable source of freight and passenger revenue. Continuing east towards Concord, the line crossed SP's San Ramon branch at Las Juntas. It is this section of right-of-way which was subsequently used by the Bay Area Rapid Transit District to extend its line to Concord. This became the test track for many of the tests of propulsion, controls, and general construction which were carried out by the Transit District. Passing through Concord and surmounting Omer Hill, the line descends to Port Chicago and the relatively level route along San Pablo Bay. These diamonds belong to the Bay Point and Clayton Railroad, which was a short line owned by a nearby cement company. These shots make clear how the marshlands bordering the bay affected roadbed stability, causing a rough ride. George Hademan, a longtime SN motorman, is at the controls of one of the big interurbans. Sacramento Northern's predecessor, the Oakland, Antioch, and Eastern, reached the shore of San Pablo Bay by constructing a subway underneath the SP and Santa Fe railroads. At West Pittsburgh, the 2-mile extension to Pittsburgh branched off the main line, which then turned north. The Pittsburgh station was the terminal for Contra Costa County local service, which was the final segment of passenger service abandoned in June of 1941. Venerable Combine 1001 was one of the original cars purchased from the Holman Car Company to begin service. And after being lengthened by the railroad in 1913, it became the permanent Pittsburgh shuttle car, carrying revenue passengers to mainline trains at West Pittsburgh and providing transportation for ferry crews. The catenary-equipped Ramon was a 200-foot, 500-ton car ferry, which crossed Suisun Bay between Mallard and Chips for 40 years. Listen to the voice of Captain William J. Stritsky as he describes some of his adventures piloting the ferry across the busy bay during his 38-year career.
The Ramon was built and went into service July 1914. And with the Ramon shallow draft, and being underpowered, she was very, very difficult to handle under extreme weather and tide conditions. So you get close and closer to the slip, and it was rather hard over. All you could do was back her up and try it all over again. The Ramon, she's had a lot of adventure in her 40 years of operation. She has been ashore at least 6 times that I know of. And most of this was due to mechanical failure. They just had to shut the engine down, and there you were. One night I left Chips there about 11 o'clock at night. There was a terrific wind and tide. We got out the midstream there, and the strainer to the suction of the circulating water to the engine got plugged up, and the engineer had to stop the engine without any warning whatsoever. And I dropped the anchor, which held for about 15 minutes, and the anchor chain broke. And we started out for Pittsburgh. So we were just about to go ashore there when the old SP stern wheeler, the Modoc, was coming out of New York Slough, and we whistled for her help. And when the Modoc pulled alongside, the first thing the skipper hollered out, "Why don't you drop the anchor?" I told him we did. It's out there yet. But he headed his bow quarters and took a line, and he backed down to Mallet. Now, in leaving this slip with a passenger train, we very often use the momentum of the application of the brakes on the train to help give us that additional shove to get out of that slip. So the boat connecting the boat to the apron were let go of just as soon as the last wheel of the car was actually on the boat. To even go out and tell the motorman to give her the, come on pretty fast and give her the works to give us that additional assistance. At times at Mallet, due to the heavy westerly winds, and the rollers off the end of the slip became 6, 7, and 8 foot high. Now, in leaving the slip with a passenger train, the boat rolls so terrifically, being flat bottom, that in rolling, the springs on the train cars itself would still be swinging one way while the waves caused the vessel to swing the other way, which caused a reverse action that so frightened the passengers that they all came tearing out of the train. In fact, it rolled so bad that myself up in the pilot house would have to hang on with both hands. Once in a while you run into peculiar situations, that especially at night, the train would be above the boat and you would be a quarter of the way across the bay and you'd be standing out in the bow and a passenger would come up and ask you, "What's the matter, is the boat late? When is it coming in?" They didn't realize that they were already on the boat and a quarter of the way across. But during Sacramento State Fair, the Sacramento Northern Railroad Company on the weekends run everything that had wheels on. There was no schedule whatsoever. Every 20, 25 minutes a train left Oakland with as much as the boat would hold, just 20-minute intervals. And they had all these borrowed, even some of the key system cars, raised them up to give them the 10 inches, to give them the standard railroad clearance, and pull them with freight locomotives. And all the old passenger cars they could borrow from other railroads. At one time they even had benches in a boxcar. The restaurant on the boat, it was okay during normal conditions, could handle all the service necessary, but couldn't handle it under those circumstances. So they put tables all over the deck of the boat. That they would come down with a 6-car passenger train and stop at Chips to cut the train in half so they load both sides of the boat. The mosquitoes would be so terrific. Being hot, very hot, the passengers had all the windows open, and after standing there for 2 minutes to get on the boat, the cars with the lights in the cars attracting mosquitoes through those open windows. They were just alive with it. So boy, they finally went nuts.
After clomping across the apron at Chips, the train heads north past Dutton and crosses navigable Montezuma Slough on this drawbridge restricted to 10 miles per hour. An extra 25 cents purchased a truly first-class seat on a rare and ultimate interurban accommodation, an open-end observation car. Four-mile-long Lisbon trestle at Arcade became famous in 1951 when a portion collapsed under the weight of a heavy train of steel. The trestle crossed a weir which diverts Sacramento River runoff water during the flood season. The contrast between low and high water is spectacularly shown in these sequences. The San Francisco Post Office Special crosses another of SN's many trestles at Riverview. A meet at Jefferson on the outskirts of Sacramento. Entrance to downtown Sacramento was gained over the M Street Bridge, known locally as the Tower Bridge. Southbound trains made the transit of Sacramento's streets under 600-volt overhead, but with the line switches set for 1,500 volts. This restricted the trains to half speed until they reached Broderick, where higher voltage was picked up. Broderick, on the west side of the Sacramento River, was the junction of OA&E's line to Oakland with the original Northern Electric line to Woodland, 19 miles northwest. Pacific Gas and Electric, a major Northern California utility, provided local streetcar service in Sacramento. One of their neat double-truck Bernies waits to cross the SN's line on 8th. Tracks swung to the left in order to gain clearance for trains turning right into I Street. The big green trains loomed over vintage automobiles as they rumbled past Sacramento's post office and city hall. In 1927, Sacramento achieved the distinction of becoming one of a handful of American cities which could boast of having an interurban Union Station. This handsome new facility served patrons of the San Francisco-Sacramento Railroad to the Bay Area, Central California Traction to Stockton and Lodi, and the Sacramento Northern Railroad to Marysville and Chico. Its yard hosted a fascinating array of North and South End cars. The usual equipment for the Woodland branch consist was Combine 101 with a Niles trailer. Combo 101 had the distinction of being the last remaining original Niles Combine, and it served until the abandonment of Woodland passenger service on October 31st of 1940. After leaving Broderick, the Woodland train reverts to its true Northern Electric style and drops its pole in favor of the electric third rail. With valley temperatures sizzling near the century mark, the venerable Niles coaches sail over a trestle near Marty. Trains entered Woodland's unusual Mission-style station through an arcade at the corner, but they had to Y on the street outside. This scene has changed little since the teens, except that the original poppy orange paint scheme on the cars has been replaced by the more somber dark blue. Bernie Car 62 survived to carry passengers at the Western Railway Museum at Rio Vista Junction. At 8th and J Streets, local lines of the SN and the Central California Traction Company terminated. Thus, local transit patrons could ride streetcars of 3 different companies in Sacramento. A small yard at 17th and D Streets provided storage for all types of equipment, streetcars, interurbans, and locomotives. Our old friend, the Post Office Special, rolls along X Street and is turned for the layover until time to return the fairgoers to San Francisco. Operations on the Sacramento Northern were conducted in accordance with first-class standards. Regularly scheduled trains were assigned odd numbers westbound and even numbers eastbound. The SN never provided RPO service, but it did carry a large volume of express and sacked mail. Eastbound trains, which continued through to Marysville and Chico after arriving from the Bay Area, required an electrical changeover. Trolleys were lowered, and as demonstrated by Richard Sachs, a veteran maintainer, third rail shoes were installed for the 600-volt run over the old Northern Electric to Chico. Westbound trains passing through Sacramento reversed this procedure. Train 19, a Sunday and holiday-only run, readies for its 4:50 p.m. departure. Additional street running on 15th Street and D Street brought the northbound trains to the city limits after passing under the Southern Pacific and through Hagen Yard. The line then crossed the American River on a substantial bridge which survived abandonment of the railroad to carry a pipeline across the river. A few miles further north, the American River floodplain is crossed by a trestle near Globe. It provides an ideal setting for this rare view of the observation car Moraga. Use of south end equipment north of Sacramento on through trains became common practice in the mid-30s, but regular parlor car service was discontinued in 1938. Elverta enjoyed a local service in addition to that provided by through trains. Pleasant Grove Station. The substantial station at East Nicklaus represents Northern Electric's standard architecture, including the use of field stone. Rio Oso Station. Train number 7 arrives in Marysville at 1:40 after a 12:15 p.m. departure from Chico, and it will cover the next 42 miles to Sacramento in a little over an hour. These big cars could easily hit 65 to 70 miles an hour. Sunday, October 21, 1940, was the last day of regular service on the old Northern Electric line, and this train of classic Niles Wood interurbans was a special charter train for the occasion. St. Louis-built Combine 109 was the motor regularly used to provide the 2 daily round trips on the Colusa branch. Waiting to start the return trip from Colusa. Art Alter, whose devotion to his craft provides many of these scenes of a great interurban, reflects the high temperatures so common in the Sacramento Valley in the summer. The annual spring floods sometimes caused serious service interruptions. Witness these scenes of the Southern Pacific's bridge over the Feather River and the SN right-of-way through a dike now closed to prevent low-lying areas being inundated by floodwaters. SN's ubiquitous bobbers connected Yuba City and Marysville with a local service to Yuba City's commodious station. An unusual consist of a Niles motor, the Berry car, with a Hall Scott trailer in tow. Substantial yard trackage was used to marshal the considerable freight business which the SN turned over to its parent Western Pacific, and which kept a number of steeple cab juice jacks busy. Connecting service to Oroville from this junction was provided by this classic Greyhound bus. One could obtain a round-trip passage on Sunday or holidays from San Francisco for $2.25. The rich agricultural nature of the Sacramento Valley is apparent in these views as we approach the northern terminus of Chico. Northern Electric's private right-of-way came to an end where it entered Chico at 20th and Park Streets. Well-equipped and very complete shop facilities at Mulberry became the mainstay of the amalgamated system, and relegated the inferior and cramped shop at 40th and Shafter Streets in Oakland to minor maintenance and running repairs. For a relatively small town, Chico sported enough operations under wire to make it a rail fan's mecca. Arrival at Chico's neat station is the end of the trip, and the end of this odyssey of America's most scenic interurban.